Aloha, I'm Brian with Enjoying Life on Oahu. I'm also a real estate agent here on the island. And thanks for watching my video today. This one's being created kind of more directed towards people who perhaps are visiting Hawaii for the first time, want to offer some information that might make your trip more enjoyable and perhaps hopefully save you for some potential problems. And with that out of the way, let's get started.
I love you like la 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 la. I love you like la 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 la. I love you like la 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 la.
When coming to Hawaii, I highly recommend that you pump the brakes, slow your roll, and embrace just the vibe of island time here. It's definitely a real thing, and especially with the amount of tourists that we get here, whether you're arriving by plane or by ship, there's going to be delays when you get to the rental car agency, most likely when you get to wherever you're staying to check into your room. Almost guarantee at a restaurant that doesn't take reservations, there's going to be a delay. And so when that happens, I just recommend that, you pause for a moment and just experience the beauty around you and don't let these little delays kind of ruin your experience here. And me personally, overall, I really enjoy the slower pace here. The only times it really frustrates me is, if you watched an earlier video, you know this, is that, when it takes a year longer to get a building permit, a year, give or take, a few months to get a business license. That I find unacceptable in a failure of government, but the rest, just part of the lifestyle and the culture here. So again, enjoy it and have a wonderful time here while you're visiting. So for me, surfing is one of my most favorite things to do here in Hawaii. And the preface, I'm by no means an expert. I've only been surfing, regrettably, for about 5 years. I wish I would have started my small kid days. But despite only surfing for 5 years, I've learned a lot during that time through personal experience, through observation, and I've also been blessed to surf with some pretty quality surfers. And the thing about surfing, if you're new to this, is that if something goes wrong, this is a sport where you can literally potentially die. And it's incredible these days how, since I've been surfing, how much more crowded generally the surf breaks are. And a lot of that has to do with COVID, where during the lockdown, pretty much the only thing we could do outside other than go shopping was go in the ocean. And so during that time, many people took up surfing. But on top of that, overall worldwide, just surfing has become more popular. And I understand it. I love to see people ride their first wave, because to me it's a very special thing to be out in the water on a board and catching a wave. So I embrace new people picking up the sport. But again, due to the risks involved, it's very important that you don't surf beyond your skill sets. And I'm a person who, I'm all about, pushing your boundaries to grow, overcoming your fears and your discomfort. But if you're not familiar with the surf breaks here in Hawaii, I highly recommend before you enter the water, either talk to a lifeguard if there's a lifeguard station there, or you talk to a surfer who's either about to go in the water or coming out, and ask them, because there's so many things you need to know and consider. One is, what's the bottom like? Is it very reefy? If it is, what's the depth of the water? If you wipe out, what's the risk of you hitting the reef and getting cut up? How does the water flow, like on a big surf day? I've gotten in trouble where on a local spot I'd surfed before on smaller days, I went out once on a big day, and incredibly different how the water flowed in the current, and I got myself in trouble that day. So water flow, current, how the wind's blowing, even you gotta know, it's very important that you know what the swell is, the forecast for the swell. And a good example of this is that just a week ago, I went to Waikiki one morning to go shoot some photography. And I looked at the surf forecast, and I expected it to be a pretty big day, and it was going to be building the next few days. And I get down there in the morning, and I was pretty relieved because it wasn't that big, and I thought, okay, I'm not missing anything. But within the 2 hours I was there, it's pretty dramatic how the conditions changed. The swell picked up significantly, and it was firing pretty rapid. So, and within 2 hours. So that's just a good example, is that very important you know the kind of conditions you're getting yourself into and make sure that you're comfortable with it, because on top of that, with all the crowds, you got to be comfortable with what you're doing, but you also have to be very aware of what other people are doing, because on a wipeout, that board is going anywhere. And I had two examples, is that I had a friend, she's local, been surfing for many, many years, and she was surfing a very popular spot. She surfed many times before, and she'd fallen off her wave, and as she got her head out of the water, somehow the nose of her board hit her in her eye, and it's caused long-term eye damage. And she's been suffering this for years now. And even a better example is that recently on YouTube, I watched a video of a surfer, very competent surfer, younger, very physically fit, was surfing right around Pipeline. I think it was about a 15-foot swell day, and his leash broke on a wave, and he got in big trouble to the point where, and this is all on video, where he starts waving, trying to get someone's attention on the shore to come rescue him because he said he's about to black out. And fortunately, shortly after he was waving, his feet touched bottom. He was able to get himself out of the water. But on this video, he's saying, he's like, oh my gosh, I almost died. And this is, again, a very experienced surfer, very physically fit. And how he explains it was that he was not familiar how the water flowed there on that big of a day. And he got kind of this current, and he was baffled that he could not get himself into shore. And so it can be very dicey out there if you don't know what you're doing and you're not familiar with the conditions. So again, just be safe out there, have a wonderful time, but just be cautious again. And make sure you have the right information if you're surfing a break that you are not familiar with. All right, this is a follow-up with surfing, is that if you're gonna go swim in the ocean here or play in the surf break, really highly advise that you know that your skill sets and kind of know how to handle the conditions. I personally had learned the hard way. About a year and a half ago, I was out at Keiki Beach on the North Shore, and if you're not familiar with Keiki Beach, it's considered one of the most dangerous, I've learned, breaks on the island. And Clark Little, who's a world-renowned surf break photographer, Jamie O'Brien, who's a stellar surfer, both of them have said that Keiki Beach has probably the heaviest lip in the world. And I went there one winter day with my girlfriend at the time, and she's a very competent water woman, I'd say. Really comfortable in the water. And it was, like I said, it was a big day, and she went out there, and what I learned after the fact is that regardless of the size of the wave, well, there's a point, but if you know how a wave's breaking, I mean, there's an impact zone, and if you know how to position yourself in that wave, you greatly reduce the risk of being hurt on a big shore break. The flip side is, if you know what you're doing like me, the odds increase dramatically of getting injured. And that's what happened to me. I was only in the water a very short time, cracked my head, had to go to the hospital and get staples. So other than if you're in Waikiki, which is for the most part is very calm, very safe for almost all skill levels to go and play in the water and snorkel, have fun. When you get outside Waikiki, you know, all the breaks kind of have different currents, rip tides, the swell can break differently, the bottom can be a lot reefier. It all depends on what's going on, so make sure you talk to some locals if you are concerned about kind of the conditions, and it's very important that you know the conditions that are going to be going on when you're in the water. And one last example is that I had another local, she's another one who's very competent in the water. She was at a place called China Walls, and that's in East Oahu, and it's a great spot on a big swell day. Surfers surf really close to these rocks here, and how the water breaks, it's a beautiful scene. And she was there, and again, she's very skilled in the water, but somehow, I don't know if she wasn't paying attention, but a wave caught her and she just got rocked along the shore and got cut pretty bad. And I've been there days where it's been almost flat with the water conditions. Easy to get in, you just jump in, but due to the rocks, it can be challenging to get out. And I've seen people who come out, their shins are bloody, their feet are cut up. So again, just talk to locals before you enter any water that you think might be a trouble spot or you're just not familiar with. This is kind of a follow-up from that last clip, where if you have any sort of cuts, scrapes, open wounds, highly recommend you don't go in the ocean until they've healed. And this is somewhat counter my understanding when I grew up on the mainland in the Pacific Northwest. As a young kid, I was taught if you have any sort of cuts or scrapes, there's a healing benefit by going in the salt water. And I did that many times and never had any sort of ill effect by doing so. But here, I've been told by locals, medical professionals have told me, I've read it online, is that if you have any sort of a open wound on your body, best you don't go in the water because unfortunately the water around here is quite polluted in some areas. My understanding is it's more in the Waikiki area. I've never seen water samples in the North Shore, maybe deep on the west side. My assumption would be the water would be cleaner over there, but I do know that in parts of the island the water is pretty polluted here, even on pretty clean days. So again, any sort of wounds, I just recommend you wait until those are healed before you go in the ocean. And also, being in Hawaii, you're probably aware that we get a lot of rainfall here. And if it's been raining heavily for more than a day or so, odds are there's going to be some areas around the shoreline that have brown water. And my first experience with this was shortly after moving here. It had been raining quite hard for several days and started to clear up, and I decided I wanted to go surfing. Got down to the beach and water was visibly brown, and just intuitively I knew, just to be careful, don't want any of this in my mouth. But got in the water, paddled out. But unfortunately, as I was paddling out, a wave came over the front of my board and I got some water in my mouth. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I went out to the lines, had a fun surf session, and this is kind of mid-afternoon in the day. Went home, did some work, had a nice dinner, and went to bed feeling really good. And I don't know, it was a short time after I went to bed, I got really, really ill and went on for hours. And if you watched one of my other videos before where I talk about how many homes around here are built very close together and there's not much privacy because windows are open, well, I guarantee my neighbors knew that I was sick because, this went on for hours and very nauseous, and I just did not have the strength to try to be quiet. So it was a very difficult experience to the point where I was really considering going to the hospital. But fortunately, shortly after that, I started feeling better. Then I started doing some research online though, and I was amazed to find out there can be some really nasty things in the water here after heavy rainfall. There's a bunch of cats that live in the mountains or in the hills and the lowlands. Got pigs, a lot of chickens, and just with the high population here, water can be very, very gross after heavy rainstorms. So just take that in consideration. So I highly recommend you don't leave any personal belongings in your vehicle while it's unattended. And unfortunately, crime can be a problem here, especially in the more touristy spots. Not unusual for me to see broken glass at like trailheads, parking lots at the beach. So again, if you can avoid it, try to leave all your personal belongings back at your lodging. You can save yourself a whole lot of problems and headaches. But an unusual situation, just I want you to be aware of, is that I knew a tour guide who used to take people on tours in her own vehicle, was a sedan, and she had taken them to a viewpoint which is right off the highway. Concluded the tour, got back to the hotel. Well, they went to the trunk to grab their personal belongings. Everything was gone, and she said somehow in this very short amount of time, someone had popped the lock and taken these people's belongings. So you really don't know. It doesn't take long to get your stuff stolen out of the vehicle when it's unattended. And another example is if you're going to the beach, especially by yourself, it seems like it's more common. I've had friends, clients, they go in the water, come back, and phone's gone, car keys are gone, wallet's gone. So just again, be extremely cautious if you don't have anybody watching your things. Again, it's just a headache when you lose those obviously those important things. So just be careful. So here in Hawaii, we have this thing called Wana, which if you're from the mainland or other parts of the world, it's known as sea urchin. And this can be really nasty stuff. I've talked to locals, and some of them act like it is absolutely the worst thing in the world to be stung by Wana. And I've had two personal experiences being stung. The first time, I was stung in a pretty fleshy, fatty spot on my body. No issue at all, no pain, nothing. But the second time, I'd been surfing in a really shallow surf spot, and as I was trying to kind of kick myself to reposition myself on my board, I felt some burning sensation in my left foot, and at the time I just thought I'd cut myself on the reef, which is pretty easy to do. But as I was paddling out to the line, the burning sensation started getting worse and worse, and when I finally got to the line, I looked at my foot, and there's a little black spot in the top of my big toe right by the knuckle, and I realized it was Wana. So eventually I went, and I knew from other people, talking to other people, that they recommend you soak, if you're stung by Wana, just soak it in vinegar. So I'd stuffed the store, bought a bunch of vinegar, and for about a week I soaked my foot in vinegar, and really didn't see any sort of improvement, but really had no issue either. It wasn't painful, it was just, you could tell the spine was still lodged in the skin. Well, after about a week, I started developing a little redness around the joint, the toe, and you can see from this video, it got pretty bad, to the point where I sought medical attention. And by seeing this doctor, I learned 3 things through this whole episode. One is that he told me I could have soaked my foot in vinegar for hours and hours for many, many, many days, and it would not have been beneficial at all. He said if you have any sort of foreign object in your body, you need to get medical attention, get it removed. The other thing I learned is that if you have a bad infection, if you let it go long enough, it's potentially can damage your bones. So just learn from my experience. If you get stung with Wana and you're experiencing pain, or if you develop any sort of redness, rash, highly recommend you seek medical attention immediately. And along those notes, and like Wana is very, very common here. There's a lot of reef here, and the Wana just loves to embed itself in the reef. So if you know you're going to be walking in reef, it might be best to put on some sort of foot protection. But all in all, I highly recommend do your best not to walk on the reef. One, due to the Wana, but other is coral. You know, it's very fragile, takes a long time to grow, and any light, you know, if you even step on coral lightly, the odds that you're doing damage is pretty high. And, you know, it's a very precious thing. So just be careful when you're going to be in the water about stepping on the reef, and if you are doing so, definitely try to avoid the Wana. So you might be coming to visit Hawaii from a place where maybe in the summertime the sunlight's not too intense, but here in Hawaii, this tropical sun, regardless of the time of year, can be really hard on your skin. And I'm surprised, oftentimes when I walk Waikiki, I see a lot of lobsters on the shore. And I know from personal experience as a kid, I used to be a sun worshiper, and I would not only put sunscreen on, I'd actually do the opposite and lather myself with oil. And there was at least one time I had to go to the hospital because I was burnt so bad. So I know how painful it can be to have a really bad sunburn. And I feel for the people I see here in Oahu that I know that they're going to be feeling pain in the evening, maybe for the next day or two, or perhaps longer. So I just highly recommend that if you're going to be spending a lot of time in the sunlight, in the water, you know, cover yourself up or put some sunscreen on, because most likely it's going to make your trip more enjoyable. So to start with this one, I want to be very clear that I'm all about freedom to the point where as long as you're not doing harm to other people. And so when it comes to rules and laws, kind of gauge what I'm saying based on that. And on the other note is that I know by far a vast majority of people here coming to visit Hawaii are here to embrace the Hawaiian spirit, the culture, the people, the life, the island, and all the beauty. So, but the reality is there's a small portion of people that do create problems, and that's kind of what this is directed towards. And an example of this is that I live near a place called Ho'omaluhia Botanical Gardens. To me, it's one of the most beautiful spots on Oahu. It's a place that I visit very frequently, and in fact, I was just there this morning. And it's become very popular over the years due to social media, and the reason being is that as you enter, there's a long road, and the backdrop is the Ko'olau Mountains and lush green forests, really, really beautiful. And people love standing in the middle of the road, get your picture taken with the Ko'olaus and all this in the background. And because of this, it creates a hazard, safety hazard for people. So what the park has done, And as you enter, there's a security shack and a security person that you have to check in with as you enter the park. And what the park has done is that there's many visible clear signs that say no picture, video taking on or near the road, no standing or stopping. Well, the problem is that this is ignored quite often. And I mean, I saw it today on a walk, and when this is ignored and the security person sees it, oftentimes there's a siren that goes off. Then the security person gets on a blowhorn and starts yelling at the people, you know, no pictures, no video, move. The unfortunate thing is that generally people ignore the security person when this is going on. And it's kind of comical, ironic that Ho'omaluhia in Hawaii means a place built for peace and tranquility. So these people are completely ruining the experience for other visitors that are going there to just enjoy the quiet and beauty of this botanical gardens. And they're also, I would argue, ruining the experience for themselves. So again, when you're here, and again, this is directed for a very small portion of viewers or people coming to here as visitors, is that have the mindset, I would say, is do unto others that you have do unto yourself. Just creating any mishaps, because there are some locals here that they don't have much patience for visitors, and it can be understandable in some ways how some people disrespect the land as well as the people. So again, just a little note of caution, and be a little more, I'll just leave it at that. On another note though, as far as trespassing, is that there are some areas where there is a chance to you'd have to cross private land to get to maybe a scenic viewpoint on a trail or something. And again, it just goes back to do unto others that you want them to do unto you. You know, if this was your land, would you want a bunch of people crossing your own private property, especially when it's clearly posted no trespassing? Yeah, so you do that, won't be any problem. So during your stay here in Hawaii, the odds are pretty high you're going to come across wildlife at some point. Sea turtle, honu, very common. You might get lucky, see yourself or find yourself swimming with dolphins. You might see monk seals either on shore or in the water. Rays, I mean, there's just abundance of wild and sea life. And important that you do know that there are laws protecting and restricting how close you can get to monk seals, and a new law was recently passed about how close you can get to dolphins. So when you do come across wildlife, I just recommend you appreciate them from a distance and give them their space. And on that note is that it was pretty incredible during this whole COVID lockdown how quickly it seemed like wildlife came back to some areas, even how just nature kind of reclaimed some certain spots. Which is really neat to see. So again, if you have the good fortune to come across some of the wildlife here, if they approach you, you know, that's one thing, but if they're just resting or something, it's best to give them some distance. But other than that, you know, enjoy all the beauty that Hawaii has to offer. It's really, it's a very special place. So the Ala Wai Canal here in Waikiki on Oahu, to me, kind of a beautiful thing. They started building it in 1921 and finished it up in 1928. The purpose was to kind of capture some water from swamps and also from rivers and streams of central and east Oahu, and just channel the flow and direct it out to the ocean through the canal. And unfortunately, over the years, it's become very polluted, and it's now rated one of the most polluted waterways or rivers in the U.S. And it kind of gained more notoriety. I think it was 2017, a man fell into the Ala Wai and died shortly afterwards due to infection. And medical professionals said that the falling in the water was not really the cause. They couldn't pinpoint the cause of his death, but a lot of people correlated him falling in the Ala Wai with him dying. But maybe a year and a half ago, there was someone committed a crime, jumped in the Ala Wai Canal trying to escape the police. Well, the police, I think 2 police officers jumped in to get this person, and they eventually all got out. And I never heard anything about them having any sort of health problems due to being in the Ala Wai Canal. And I've seen people fish there. There's a story when they once dredged it, one of the workers who was on the dredging team, they pulled out a really big shrimp he took it home and I think grilled it up and ate it. Said it was delicious, and suppose I never read anything about him having any ill effects. So it's great for observation, just and seeing it. But I'd highly advise not fishing, crabbing in it. Just enjoy it from a distance. And again, it's very polluted, so don't do any swimming. I highly recommend you do it while you're visiting Hawaii. And this was just re-emphasized with me in a personal experience I just had this past weekend where since I lived here, I've spent quite a bit of time in the water, and I've always had a desire to be in the water with a shark. And I've known other people who experienced it, but it's never ever happened to me. But this past weekend, I was snorkeling, free diving with some friends, and just swim along, and all of a sudden my buddy kind of like shouts under water and gets my attention and starts pointing, and I look down and eventually I see a white-tipped shark pretty close to us. And I had a underwater housing with my camera. I had Osmo Action camera on top of that, video camera on top of that. So I'm scrambling trying to get my camera focused and get a picture of the shark near us, and finally get it and finished being in the water. I get on shore with my buddy and I'm walking with him, and I say, you know what? I said, I really wish I didn't have my camera there, because I would have just liked to have joined the experience, just being in the water with the shark and observing it and not being so worried about trying to take a picture. So my suggestion is that take some time here in Hawaii and just put down the phone. I see it so common where people are so anxious, and again, I'm speaking from my personal experience on this one, is that when you're trying to get a picture, capture an image or a memory, there's a stress involved there about getting the correct shot, how you want the look, the lighting and everything, whatever you want to capture. So you'd lose what's going all around you because you're just focused in this little screen. So again, my point is, just put down the camera for a little bit. Doesn't have to be your whole trip, but just pause and be. Whether you're with your family or by yourself, at the beach, at a park, at a stoplight, just pause and just look around and experience yourself in this natural, beautiful spot, and not have to worry about trying to capture it or worry about what's going to happen the next moment or whatever's going to take place. Just experience what's going on at the moment, and I guarantee if you just are completely focused in the moment here and now, it's going to be special for you, and it might be one of your best memories while you're here on the island. So that's my only suggestion in this video of something to do. I do hope you put it in practice. If you like this video or this content, please like. I'd love to see some comments about maybe things you recommend also not doing or doing here while you're visiting Hawaii. And again, subscribe if you'd like. You're always welcome to, and it would help my channel. So enjoy your time here in Hawaii, and I wish you the best. Aloha.